The summer air was soft and warm when I arrived at my uncle's house. Tucked at the end of a peaceful street, his home felt like a quiet sanctuary, as though the walls held old memories. He greeted me with a beaming smile and a warm voice, ruffling my hair like I was still a child. "You've really grown," he said, and I couldn't help but laugh, strangely comforted by his presence. The early days were quiet. Mornings slipped by as I sat by the window with a book while he worked in his study. Evenings, though, were different. We'd sit on the porch and he'd tell stories from his travels, his voice calm, yet full of meaning. I was drawn to the way he spoke, so thoughtful, so kind. One evening, as the sky turned pink with the setting sun, I laughed harder than I had in months. He was telling a ridiculous story about getting lost in Italy, and something about the moment just clicked. He looked at me with soft eyes and said, "I'm glad you're here." His words stirred something inside me, comfort, yes, but also confusion. I brushed it off, but over time, I noticed things small, simple gestures that meant more than they should have. The way he made my coffee just right, or how he'd gently place a blanket over me when I dozed off. The way our eyes met and lingered a second too long. One afternoon, I was struggling with a jar in the kitchen, and he stepped behind me to help. Our hands touched. Just briefly. But the moment froze. My breath caught, and while he smiled like nothing had happened, my mind wouldn't stop racing. I told myself to stop feeling what I felt. He was family. This wasn't supposed to happen. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of every glance, every small moment, wondering if I was imagining it all. I told myself it was just comfort, just familiarity. But deep down, something was changing. The next evening, we sat on the porch again. The air was heavy with the scent of rain. He handed me a cup of tea and asked gently if I was okay. I nodded, but the words I wanted to say caught in my throat. I wanted to tell him everything, but instead, I smiled and sipped the tea, pretending nothing had shifted. Inside, I knew everything had. The following morning, sunlight spilled into the kitchen as I sat stirring my coffee. Mind still wrapped around the memory of his touch. When he walked in, casually dressed, I noticed details. I shouldn't have the roll of his sleeves, the quiet strength in his movements. I shook the thoughts off. "You're quiet today," he said, taking the seat beside me. "Just thinking," I replied, forcing a smile. But I couldn't stop noticing him. Was I confusing affection for something deeper? That afternoon I offered to help him cook. We joked and bumped shoulders as we moved around the small kitchen. When we both reached for the same cutting board, our fingers touched, and again, the pause. I apologized quickly. He smiled, but his eyes held something I couldn't quite place. That night, the storm hit. We sat in the living room, wrapped in blankets. Without a word, he moved closer and put his arm around me. I should have pulled away, but instead I leaned into him. I told myself it was innocent, but the way his hand moved gently on my arm told me it wasn't. My thoughts were a blur. Was this just kindness, or something more? The next day, I kept my distance. I stayed upstairs, trying to distract myself. But when he called me for lunch, I couldn't ignore him. We sat quietly until he finally said, "You've been avoiding me." I froze. I started, but couldn't finish. "You don't have to explain," he said. But I knew he didn't understand because I barely did. I was scared of what I felt, scared of what it might mean. The silence between us grew heavier. Every shared moment stretched longer, every glance weighed more. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, but the way he looked at me said otherwise. Another storm rolled in, knocking out the power. He lit candles, and the house was swallowed in silence. We sat across from each other, talking about childhood memories, how he used to take me for ice cream, how time had flown by. Then his tone shifted. "You've grown up," he said quietly, his eyes fixed on me. My chest tightened. "I guess," I whispered. He leaned in, and for a moment, the space between us disappeared. "You've been on my mind," he admitted, "and I know I shouldn't feel this way, but—" He stopped, afraid to say more. I met his gaze. "I feel it too," I said, barely louder than a breath. He exhaled, as if he'd been holding everything in. For a moment, it felt like we were on the edge of something we couldn't take back. Then he leaned away, running a hand through his hair. "This isn't right," he said. "You're family. I can't hurt you." "I know," I whispered, my throat tight. "I think I should go home early," I said after a long pause. He didn't try to stop me, just nodded, eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. That morning, I packed in silence. I didn't know what I was feeling: love, confusion, grief. I wanted to stay, but I knew leaving was the right thing. Before I left, I sat at the table and wrote him a note. The words didn't come easily. After a few tries, I wrote, "I don't know what this is, or if it's something I should be feeling, but it's real, and I think you feel it too. I'm leaving because I have to, but thank you for making me feel seen, safe, and cared for." I folded the note, left it on the counter, and stepped outside. Not even 2 blocks away, my phone rang. It was him. "I read your note," he said, voice thick with emotion. "And I need you to know you're not alone in this. I care about you too much to let this turn into something we'd regret. I'd never forgive myself." His honesty stung, but I knew he was right. "I understand," I whispered. "You're important to me," he said. "That doesn't have to change just because you're leaving." Tears welled in my eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from something bittersweet, something like peace. "Take care of yourself," I said softly. "You too," he replied. "And if you ever need me, I'm here." The call ended, and I stood there, the weight on my chest slowly lifting. This wasn't the ending I had imagined. No grand gesture, no clear answers, but maybe it was better this way. 2 people brave enough to step back from something undefined, yet deeply felt. I took a deep breath and kept walking, holding on to his words, knowing that some connections are meant to be remembered, even if they can't be more